It's great to meet you, Jim. Thank you so much for taking a minute out for the show today. I appreciate it.
And I'm glad to be here.
So let's begin our journey with this. I always start with this question, and it's the COVID question. 6 years ago, it changed our lives, changed our world. How did you get through that era, and how has it influenced the way that you live and do things in 2026?
So I think COVID changed the world. It definitely changed the business world. The one thing that I learned as a result of COVID and running sales organizations is people did not forward their office phone to their cell phone. And they immediately used voicemail as a mechanism to keep away from people. And became harder and harder from a sales perspective. And what we did is we figured out how many times it would take us to reach out to you, Joe, before you would say, I've had enough. I'm going to just tell them to go away, or I'm, going to just put them on my spam list. And it actually made us very successful. We got to the point when we started with 6 outreaches a month to a person. And we would only target them for a 30-day period. And so it could be a LinkedIn request, it could be a message on LinkedIn, it could be an email, could be a phone call, could be a text message, but there were sequences that we used that had 6 steps. What we learned by the end of 2020 was that 6 wasn't moving the needle. So we doubled it to 12. And what we learned from that exercise was that number 12 created our name to be top of mind. And while they never returned our call, 66% of our sales came from people and names of people that called us when they had trouble with what we did at the time was healthcare portals
Yeah.
for insurance companies. And so what happened was when they realized that they needed a more efficient portal, the first company they thought of was us. So between 2019 and 2023, we tripled the size of the company in the middle of COVID,
Wow.
while everyone else was struggling.
Wow. So this is a perfect segue into exactly what you do on an operations logistic level on a daily basis. I want you to synthesize everything you do for a 13-year-old brain at career day at a school. How do you explain what you do?
Um, I, besides being a sales leader, I call myself the leadership identity architect, because what happens in our country today and around the world is when a position opens up, somebody goes to the best technical manager that they have and they say, we're going to make you a manager, but they don't give them a roadmap to follow. And 18 months later, that manager burns out and is frustrated because they don't know why their team's not performing, and they're going home and they're saying they can't figure it out to their spouse. And then another thing starts to happen is employees start to leave. And the Society of Human Resource Managers did a study, and they listed the top 10 reasons people voluntarily quit their jobs. 8 of the top 10 reasons are related directly to that leader. The average attrition rate in this country today is between 10 and 15%.
Wow.
My historical attrition rate is under 5%
Wow.
because I build identities. And I built and I lead. And in the book that I released, um, I call it the 5 pillars of effective leadership. The number one pillar is integrity. And leading with integrity and transparency to me is non negotiable.
Yeah.
I don't know where we went awry around the world with regard to lacking integrity. I think we, I think it's more than 10 and 15 years ago. I can't pinpoint when the transition happened, but we have slowly gotten further and further and further away from it.
Yeah.
And my message is to bring that back. That's the biggest cause of disconnects in organization is the lack of transparency and the lack of integrity. And I'll tell you a story. I like to tell stories, but
Yeah.
when I was 22 in 1983, I graduated college. Now I'm giving my age away. That same year I graduated college, in that fall, I ran for city government in that small town I grew up in.
Wow.
I won. And a couple of weeks after the election, um, I wasn't even sworn in until January 1st, but a couple of weeks after the election, I get a call from the city manager who asked if I could come in and talk to him. And we sat down and started talking. And he, in that conversation, he changed my life. And at one point, he said, I want to ask you to do me a favor. And I said, okay. I'm thinking, I'm not even sworn in and somebody wants a political favor. What is this, right? Where's this going? This wasn't that at all. And he said, you're a smart guy. And he said, you'll do great things for our tiny little town and beyond. And he said, but I want you to do this. He said, every night when you lay down and put your head on the pillow, I want you to ask yourself this one question. Did I do anything today for my own self benefit that was at the expense of an individual, group of individuals, or an organization? And he said, if you answer yes to that question before you can go to sleep and close your eyes, you need you need to figure out, if you said yes, how you're going to unwind it and how you're never going to repeat that again.
Yeah.
But if you say no, you can rest peacefully.
I love it.
I have guided my life from that moment forward on that very question. And my teams all know that integrity is the number one rule. Give it to me straight. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to fix the mistakes. We're all going to get better, but we've got to own up to them and we've got to be transparent.
I love it.
And that's it. I think, to me, it's not the only secret sauce, but without integrity, you can't show compassion or empathy because nobody will believe you.
Yeah.
Nobody will believe you. And today's world, everyone is so hypersensitive. Our employees do not feel psychologically safe in many of their work environments, whether it's for fear of being attacked by someone verbally or being just fired for no reason at all. And in order to have attrition rates in the single digits, your teams have to be psychologically safe,
Yeah.
and mine are. But what the attrition rate around the country tells us is we have a leadership issue, and we're not. In all my years of work, I've only worked with one company that truly had a leadership development program and a mentoring program. As we've gone away and cut budgets, HR budgets have been slashed. Training doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
Or if it does, it's computer-based training and it's focused on do this habit every day and you'll be a superstar. But it doesn't do anything about changing the identity of the person. And you really have to change that identity in order to truly get that team together. It's no different than a coach, right? If you come off the floor of a basketball game and your shoulder's hurting, that coach is going to, show a little compassion to you, try to make sure you're okay. I mean, but if you're not showing integrity, they're not going to take that as legitimate,
Yeah.
and they're not going to trust you.
Yeah.
And the biggest reason people buy products today is trust.
Yep.
Trust. If they don't trust you, they can't afford to endorse you. And I build my framework will build trust and psychological safety.
So, what did you want to be when you were a kid? What was your dream job?
When when I was 4 and 5 years old, I used to walk around with the postman because it was a walking route, and he was a family friend. He went to our church. His wife worked with in the same factory my dad worked in, and back at that time in the 60s, you could walk around with almost anybody, and it was safe to do so. Can't
Yes.
do that today. And we had a conversation one day when he said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "I kind of like what you do." He said, "No, no, no, no. You're not going to be a postman." He said, "What do you really want to do?" And I said, "I don't know, but when I see things on TV, I just want to have a big desk." And he said, "You need to be a lawyer." I said, "And why is that?" He said, "Well, you're a good talker, and you don't talk like a 5 year old. You talk like a 9 year old. And if you can be a lawyer, you'll have a big desk." I said, so I grew up saying I was going to be a lawyer,
That's great.
and went to college, and then realized that law school was going to be more money, and I didn't never went to law school, and I just went out and started doing my thing and managing people.
So, how did you pick up these levels of integrity? These are things that are hard earned over time. They can be good seeds planted, examples that are bad that maybe you want to correct, or people that you run into. But how did all of this accumulate into this wisdom and this way of helping others get there?
So it started with integrity, and all of the six pillars are really more, with the exception of one, emotional intelligence type items. And my degree's in psychology. And so, understanding I view my job as a leader to be able to recognize when you walk in the morning, or when we get on the Zoom call meeting, whether you're having a good day or a bad day, just by the way you're holding your shoulders, your chin, is your chin up, is your chin down, are you smiling, do you always smile? Noticing those things and making sure I address them, and making sure that if I can help you solve that dilemma or problem, sick child, sick dog, whatever, that I can do that. I'll give you an example. I had a woman working for me a few years ago, single mom, absent dad, no contact with the dad. Had a son 12 years old. It was the end of July. She had been working her butt off for the previous 60 days. And I said to her, I said, "You haven't taken any time off yet to be with your son." She said, "It's too busy." I said, and this was on a Wednesday. And I said, "That's unacceptable." And I said, "Here's what you're going to do. You're going to, it was around, her weekly one on one was Wednesday. And I can't remember if it was 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, but somewhere in that time frame. I said, "What you're going to do is you're going to shut your computer off. You're going to turn your cell phone off. And I don't want to see or hear from you till Monday. Your son is 12 years old. He needs his mom right now. And you need to spend time with him. And I'm going to give you that time, and you're not going to charge it as PTO." She sat back in her chair and she said, "Can I negotiate?" And I said, "Negotiate? No, I'm going to force you to take time to spend in your kid." She said, "No, but can I do it next week? I have a deliverable I promised a client by Friday, which would require me to do work. So if I close my computer and you force me this way to take off this week, I'll miss a commitment that I made to a customer." I said, "Fair enough. You tell me which days you want to take off next week." She said, "I'll do the same Wednesday, Thursday, Friday." And she said, and you won't hear from me, and I'll be 100% focused on my son." Deal. That Monday, she came back after she had taken those days off. She called me. She said, "I cannot thank you enough for what you made me do.
Wow.
I probably would have gone the whole summer and not taken time to be with him. And you were right. I needed to spend time with him. And she got a little bit emotional over that discussion. And she said, I just can't thank you enough for recognizing my personal life and something I needed to do. And that's, I think, what our job is as leaders. It's not just on delivering the numbers. If you have it, if that person's became a very loyal and hard and was always a hardworking person, but she realized at that point I had her back
Yeah.
and I understood what she needed and I knew what she needed to do because I had had kids at one point that were 12 years old. And so to me, and Harvard doesn't teach this stuff. No
Right.
offense about against Harvard.
Sure.
And these are things you have to learn over time. There's no magic book on compassion. It's life experiences. So in my workshops and in my coaching and even in my book, I give you exercises to try to do it, but you have to hone and develop them over time. I will be honest, Joe. My first time as a manager, I look back at that, I was horrible. I didn't know what I was doing. And I made it intentional to figure out how to be the manager that everybody else wasn't and that everybody wanted to follow. And that's where the pillars come from.
You mentioned that we don't get taught these things. When you become a manager, you become a leader, you don't have a roadmap. You don't know what you're doing. There's burnout, there's laws of attrition. But when I think back to my childhood, I think about the presidents that would give speeches after calamities. I think about all the people that were around me, teachers and counselors and all of this. What were the early examples of leadership that subconsciously planted seeds that made you want to go after this and to see and foster that the world would get better ones?
Um, it's funny. Sometimes a good story always starts with a tragedy.
Yeah.
And when I was in second grade, I had a brother who was in fourth grade, and my younger sister was in kindergarten, and there were two older ones. And I got called down to the office, and my brother was waiting there, and there was a police officer waiting there, and he was also a neighbor of ours who said, I came to take you guys home. You're going home for the rest of the day. Had no idea. It's the only time I had to ride in a police car. Um, got home, and we just learned that our brother was killed in Vietnam. And it changed the dynamics of the family. And my dad, who was always an extrovert, always the comedian, sometimes he couldn't even come eat dinner with us. But the one thing he said to us, now my brother chose to go into a trade. He didn't want to go to college. My oldest sister had just graduated college the June before. In fact, the day we dropped George off to go to basic training, the next day we went to our sister's college graduation where President Johnson spoke.
Wow.
And come around to next January, this all happens. And then from that point forward, my dad, who was a carpenter, um, said to the three young kids, you are all going to college. I don't know how we're going to pay for it, and you have no choice in the matter. You're going to college.
Hmm.
And I was very athletic as a kid. I was captain of a couple of sports teams. Um, when I got into high school, the second defining moment was sitting in history class because every year we had a mock election and we had the students take over the town for a day. And I'm sitting in Mr. Steer's history class, and he's talking about the junior mayor campaign, and we need people to run for mayor, and and everybody on their platform would get positions in the city for the day. And Tracy Tracy Losky, who sat next to me when it came time for nomination, she kind of smacked my arm and she said, "I'm nominating you." And I said, why? She said, because you can be mayor. And she said, and you're not going to stop me. And I said, well, wait a second. And before I could say another word, she nominated me. So I ran for junior mayor. I ran against two other people and we won. And we took over the town for the day and I sat in the mayor's chair. And I liked the feeling of the mayor's chair. So as I'm going through college and getting nearer the end of college, I get approached by both political organizations in the town I grew up in to run for political office. I was a volunteer in the town. I was a volunteer on the first aid and rescue squad. My dad had been a fireman in the town, a volunteer fireman. And so I always believed in giving back. And so it was natural for me when both parties asked me to run for city council, that obviously they all had been watching me and knew what I was doing and, had some sort of respect for me. And it started at a young age, but carried through.
So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that gets your book, everyone that knows you in different capacities. But you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I am a reasonable, fair, and consistent leader. I show up the same way every day. Whether it's a good day or a bad day, I'll always show up the same way. And that's what I try to instill into others. We are all going to have some of those days where we need an extra 5 minutes of time or whatever. But I always, I'm the one who says, look, I'm available 24/7. You need to talk to me on a weekend, you call me on the weekend. And I learned that by working with Ross Perot. When I worked at Perot Systems, whenever I had a client come in, I always used the boardroom and I always ordered barbecue for lunch because he would smell it and he would always stop in and tell stories. And what he also would do was he would hand out his business card and he would handwrite his home phone number on the business card.
Wow.
And he would say to every one of my customers, if Jim doesn't get you, if Jim doesn't fix or help you on your account, you call me and you can call me 24/7 and you have my home phone number.
Wow.
And the last thing I ever wanted was someone calling Mr. Perot on a Saturday or a Sunday. And I can honestly tell you, not one of my customers ever had to call him.
Wow. That's amazing. So, of everything that you've accomplished in your professional life, what are you the proudest of?
Professionally, what am I proudest of?
Yeah, or you personally. I mean, it can be anything. What are you the proudest of when you look back on your life?
When I look back, I look back at all of the people who continue to reach out to me when they're looking for their next opportunity to see if I have an opening.
Wow.
I'm really proud of that fact. The one thing I wanted to do with this book was I wanted to make sure that if somebody who had worked with me at any point in time in my career opened the book, that they could feel me telling them the words in the book. I can't tell you how many people have said to me, I feel like you're sitting next to me telling me these things. But I've also had people who I don't even know write reviews and say such things as, I don't feel like this is a leadership mantra. I feel like I was sitting next to an older, mature, professional mentor giving me wisdom. And I value that because I think I'm making a difference and I just need a bigger platform to be able to do. I mean, obviously I've done it myself. It'll work. And I'm starting to do more and more and more of this. And when this episode comes out, I'm sure we'll have some. Actually, I'm going to throw you a curveball.
Okay.
When this episode comes out, the first 5 people who make a comment about the episode and tag you and I will send a free copy of my book to.
I love it.
The first 5 people. So you have to comment on social media and comment on this show and tag Joe and tag me, and I will send the first 5 people a copy of this book autographed. And because I want your feedback
Yeah.
based on what you heard today. I always ask every time I have a one-on-one with an employee, the last thing I always ask them, I always tell them the one-on-one meeting is their meeting, not mine. But I always ask them, is there anything else you're not getting from me? Or is there anything else I can do to help you? And I just want to I just like to know whether my message is resonating.
Perfect segue. If anyone wants to get a copy, reach out, hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
Uh, JimCarlough.com. The book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or it's available through me. If you get it through me, you get it autographed, but the price is still the same. Um, and Amazon, in many areas, Amazon carries a small stock of them, I've noticed, because people are telling me when they ordered it, it was there in 2 days,
Wow.
which tells me that they are printing them ahead of time. It may not be nationally, but anyway, because it is print on demand. But yes, uh, I've got my book. I've got programs for coaching. I do a weekly cohort, and I do them periodically. And I'll and put out a notice about a webinar to learn more about an 8-week cohort where we really dive into these principles and do role plays and everything else. And it's very intentional. And you will come out at you will have your first learnings and notice a difference in less than 2 weeks. In less than 2 weeks. In
Wonderful.
14 days, you will see a change in your own feelings and position as a leader. And then at 12 weeks or 10 weeks, whenever we are done with the course, you will feel very differently and very confident in being a leader. And I can do the same thing on the corporate level. So I have a 3-day workshop for a corporation for their leaders. So anybody who's listening, there's an opportunity for you as an individual to become a better leader or as an organization.
I love it. I will put all these links in the show notes. What a joy, Jim. Thank you so much for your light. Thank you for your story. Best of luck.
Thank you for having me, Joe. This was great. This was
Absolutely.
great.
I loved it. I will.